Hi, I'm Geraldine Glass, and welcome to the Sacred Science of Sound. Create well-being and harmony in your life through the healing power of music, sound vibration, and energy medicine. I am thrilled and honored and excited to have Dr. Sue Morter as my guest today, and looking forward to sharing time with Dr. Sue. I'd love to share with you first how I met Dr. Sue, and that was almost 4 years ago. I lost my son, my only child, Dylan Sage, and on the night that he passed, he began communicating with me through sound. And at midnight that night, I was walking down by the beach and saw an amazing shooting star and could hear him through this whoosh, over the basin, starting from my family home where I grew up, over the basin of Los Angeles, almost as if it landed in the mountains. Mom, it's like we always talked about. I'm with God. And so that began this journey through sound, through vibration. And about 3 months in, I got the message, Mom, we're going to go to Machu Picchu. That had been on our bucket list. He was a ski racer and he loved the mountains, and we had seen Mount Everest and traveled to many stunning high altitude places in the world. And so I said, okay, Sonny, we're going to go to Machu Picchu, so show me who we're going to go with. And I opened the computer and I Googled spiritual journeys to Machu Picchu, and the first person that came up was this beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman, a doctor from Indiana, Dr. Sue Morter. And I looked and I said, okay, but shouldn't we be going with a shaman? And I could hear him say, Mom, she is a shaman. And that's how I met Dr. Sue. And through her work of the energy codes, she's a brilliant doctor and expert in bioenergetics. Through her work and all that I've learned through the energy codes, I began to process the grief and really be able to walk a path of light again. So I'd love to introduce you to her, Dr. Sue Morter, and welcome to the Sacred Science of Sound.
Geraldine, it's my pleasure, my joy to be here with you. When I met you that evening and you came up to me and told me the story, I knew something very magical was going to happen. I knew this was a very important meeting. And the things that transpired on that trip were absolutely, cosmically, divinely beautiful. And I feel that everything that I've witnessed in you since that moment has been an example of exactly what we would love everyone to know. And so it's my joy to be here. And by the way, I will say that they used to call me the shaman in a business suit. So you never, I don't think I ever told you that, but I was, when I was speaking to medical audiences and in environments where shamans wouldn't have been showing up, somebody, in our community said, well, you are a shaman, you're just in a business suit. So Dylan was right. It just didn't show up that way on the internet.
So I think one of the things I've really learned from you is that we are truly made of sound, vibration, and light, and that we are made of energy. And yet sound, vibration, and light, that's where we come from and where we return to. And on that trip to Peru, which was life-changing, I met Dr. Sue's community, and one of the folks said to me, you don't know this yet, but you have landed in the most perfect and amazing and loving community that you could ever have landed in with what's happened in your life. And this is true. So my son knew exactly what he was doing. And we went as part of the journey to Machu Picchu. We had an excursion to the top of Machu Picchu, and the night before I had quite an emotional breakdown, and I didn't have the strength to climb that mountain. And I had given Dr. Sue a picture of my boy with part of his college essay quote written on the back about his love of the mountains, and that the way up the mountain is the way down the mountain, and he loves every moment of his life. And unbeknownst to me, she did a little ceremony for him at the top of Machu Picchu. And would you like to talk about share that and we'll show you the picture.
Oh,
what
sure,
happened.
sure. I'd be happy to. You know, we hiked to the top of Huayna Picchu, this monolithic structure in the background of the famous pictures from Machu Picchu, and it's a few hours, couple hours up to the top. And once we got to the top all the way around, there was a small group of us that were there together, and maybe a dozen, and we gathered around, and you have a 360-degree view of heaven. It's just so magnificently beautiful. And so Geraldine had given me a picture of Dylan the night that I met her, and I had it in my backpack, so I pulled it out and I just took it, and it was a picture of Dylan, and just showed him the view from here, as if he wasn't already seeing it, but it was part of our ceremony. And then we performed just a small ritual that is traditional in the Andean peoples, and it required blowing on 3 cocoa leaves and intending what you would have be true. And the blowing actually creates a vibration through the body, which I always notice when we're doing anything with sound vibration, frequency. It reverberates from a reference point that I'm going to share with you in our conversation today, but this is what was happening. And so then you place the leaves in a position in the rock that you feel will be protected for long enough for your desire, your dreams to manifest. And so I was intending for Geraldine and for Dylan to know one another and to connect through what we call the veil, and to recognize that there is only one thing happening here, and it is all of us. It is goodness, it is God, it is union, and may we never ever forget that. Sound vibration is one of the ways that we cross the veil, which is why we're also attracted to music or to humming or to toning in different ways. And so as we did this little ceremony and I was sharing his photograph to the view, someone took a picture of me holding his picture, and you can see that picture on the screen now, and you can see this amazing ray of light coming from the heavens right into the tonal vibrational space of his image. And it is how we manifest. We manifest through the mouth, the throat, the connection between our visionary capacity and our hearts. And as we were, in this moment, someone took a photograph of that. You're seeing this photograph. So at the end of the day, we came back down the mountain. We got on the train to go back to our hotel, and the gentleman who took the photograph came back with tears in his eyes and showed me his camera, the image that we've just shown you. And we both sat there and cried because we knew exactly what was happening. That connection was being made, and it was happening in a manner that was profoundly significant. Because, as you know, Geraldine's orientation in this world has been about moving sound vibration through the system for the purpose of opera singing or healing or other forms of vibration. And so it was exactly the perfect communication from him. Exactly the perfect. It didn't come to his crown chakra. It didn't come to his heart. It came to where they live. And so this is the nature of what this series is about in my heart, that everyone learn that as we learn to manifest, we move sound vibration out into the world. We emit our own sound constantly. And so as we call it energy medicine, or we call it tonal healing or vibrational sequencing in some way that kind of unpacks and unlocks us, we start to tap into something that's deeply important. And that is that we allow our song, our music, our frequency to reveal itself. There's a vibration happening inside of all of us, and we tend to conceal it and pack it in, shove it down, box it away, because we want to fit in, or we want to do the right thing, or we're too rattled by some situation in life to ever imagine functioning in a grounded and integrated fashion again. Sometimes, such as what you were experiencing, it just seems overwhelming. But what I know is that if we can anchor ourselves, our consciousness, safely, steadily in the core of our bodies, which is what our bodies are for, to center and give a landing pad for who we really are, the essence of our being, our spirit selves, then what can happen is a reverberation of that sound that we are made of to come out and to serve and to reconnect. You know how it is when someone says hello and you're walking in a crowd where no one's speaking to anyone and someone just connects with you and says hello, and you say hello back. There's an opening that happens in the space between, and we begin to know each other again. We feel each other because of that. And so, this is what, in my heart, this whole series is about, is let's reveal. Let's let the sound of who we are be known, be heard, because it contributes to the healing for everyone when we do. We have a tendency to withhold, but if we just allow, a revealing of some sort, everything changes the channel. Everything turns into a joyous experience of connection instead of a treacherous experience of survival.
And music being my life was my language. And now suddenly to have it be revealed more and more, the connection with Dylan through this sound vibration that's always there, this vibrational frequency that I can feel him through, that has been an amazing gift. And I've learned also by the use of the toning with you and the use of the crystal alchemy singing bowls that the sound, the vibration really stills the thinking mind and drops me into my being, that it's touching my soul. It is a completely different way of using sound than my professional life before this was, but it's been the healing path.
Well, it's very interesting because if you go to the opera and it's in Italian, let's say, and you don't speak Italian, but you hear these beautiful orchestrations and the sound vibration that washes over you, brings you to tears. Maybe you don't even know the story that's being told, but something happens. There's a common language in sound vibration. It transcends the spoken language, the words that we've learned in different parts of the globe that create languages that could have a tendency to separate us. Mm-hmm. When you get underneath that with just the frequency, it's like an entirely different realm. And I work with people to get them underneath the thinking mind and the stories that we write and the differences and the grudges and the issues that we carry, so that we can find that common ground and unite. So you were doing healing work with people in your previous career, but it was just not exactly directly conscious on your part, knowing all the ways that you were truly touching people. Because every time you sang to an audience, whether they understood the words that you were saying or not, and you moved them, you opened them a little bit, which is why people enjoy going to the theater or going to the opera, because we get moved. We don't maybe understand why, but that's what's happening. It's starting to shift us and change a geometric shape that we have confined ourselves in. You see, we're multidimensional beings, and in other dimensions, we are made of different things than this flesh and bone that we are here. In the fourth dimension, in the fifth dimension, we are sound and color and structures of sacred geometries. And so when we move into those sacred sounds, we start to unpack these compressive thoughts and beliefs that we've been carrying. And by doing so, we start to experience more of who we actually are, the truth of who we are, rather than thinking that we are controlled by our history or our fears or our past circumstances that haunt us, that seem unresolved in some way. And so resolution becomes possible. We're made of light. And when you begin compressing light, which is just let me do a little physics here, okay?
Love it.
when we speak about just the laws of physics, that physical matter, this couch that we're sitting on, the pillow, the computer, the screen that you might be watching of whatever sort it is, it's made of energy that's just compressed. So the physical reality is just energy that's packed and packed and packed and packed and packed until we pack it into something we can touch. So the same is true with the physical body. And inside, that gets even more packed when we start holding grudges or feeling inadequate or strategizing with our minds about how to prove that we're okay or how to find a way to be safe. And we're constantly in our heads thinking. We're compressing the energy more than it's designed to be compressed to live as a free and fluid human being. And so we can use sound, vibration, the singing bowls, we can use humming, toning, we can use just our breath, which creates a vibration in the body that will allow us to create more spaciousness inside again, where these thoughts and beliefs that are even held at the subconscious level and keeping us in this compressed state can start to cause health problems and emotional challenges and mental distortions that cause us to believe that we're living in a world that isn't loving, that isn't kind. And then we start seeing things from that perspective, and the world keeps validating what we're perceiving and what we're believing, and it becomes reality. But it's not supposed to be that way. We're supposed to be a starting point of a sound vibration, not a reactive point of sound vibrations. And if we are in touch with our own sound vibration consistently, completely, comprehensively enough, then what begins to happen is our sound vibration emits beyond and transcends the sounds of our outer environment. And we begin to operate as creator instead of reactor. And those are some of the concepts that I look forward to sharing with everyone. How do we do this? How do we operate as a creator and bring our sound outward rather than being subject to the noises of the outer world that might be based on other people's distortions themselves? So we create an entirely different reality.
It's like what you're talking about is bringing harmony to every part of the body. As an orchestra is tuned, what you're talking about is through the exercises that I've learned from the energy codes, I bring my body into harmony. The orchestra is tuned, and every organ and every system in the body has a different frequency. And when they're out of tune, we feel dis-ease, we feel disease, we're not well. And when we're able to tune the body and create this harmony, boy, things that are intense as the anguish of losing a child, I'm working with cancer patients, those things that are that intense, lo and behold, they come into harmony through sound. Sound is something, as you said, it's the universal language. It's an age-old healing modality, been around.
Exactly that. What we're doing is we're taking energy that is blocked in one part of the body and moving it into areas where it has not been getting. And so by moving it from one area of blockage into another area, what begins to happen is the tissues begin to enliven. And as they enliven, there is a new energy frequency happening, and that's a vibration. So we're moving blocked vibrational frequency into areas that need the vibrational frequency happening in a more enlivened fashion. And so we use a variety of modalities to do that. They're all internal, and they're all, we're built with it. We're built with what we need in so many ways, and then everything that we do on top of that is just icing on the cake kind of thing. So for instance, if you drop a pebble in the water, it creates an impact right there, and then there's a ripple, a waving ripple that comes out from there. And what we want to do is learn to live right at the maximum point of impact in our own bodies. If we do so, then the sound vibration that ripples out from us is more potent, it's more clear, it's more resonant. And in all of that, what happens as a byproduct is healing. The body heals when resonance is present, when coherence is present, when we are vibrating at a frequency that is close to the earth frequency. When we are in alpha frequency, healing happens automatically. And so sometimes we have to use a variety of different frequencies in order to get to alpha. If we're very compressed, we have to use high frequency energies to bring us up to just this natural state. if we're naturally have acclimated ourselves in a way of dealing with life in kind of a frenetic way, there are some deeper tones that bring us deeper into the core of the body. And there are some things that an individual can do to help facilitate that process for purposes of healing and integration. So when we are living at the core of our bodies, we have a greater chance for everything that I just described to happen for us. But what happens is when we come into life, we land here and we kind of splat, right? And it's kind of a rough landing. We come into this life and we don't know what the heck is going on. Our minds go one way, our body goes another way, and our breath goes another way. Our spirit is just kind of hanging out, trying to figure out if it's ever going to be safe to come on into this whole physical world idea. And so consequently, we're kind of half here and half not. We live in our heads, and that's a different vibrational frequency than just living freely, fully anchored in our bodies. And so what I'm teaching people how to do is come back from the splat. Gather yourself back together again. So we land, we splat, and we start looking externally to see, am I safe? Is this okay? Am I doing the right thing? Do I fit in? Am I getting your approval? Am I getting your love? Is this how I'm supposed to do it? And we start getting in trouble for not doing things the way we're supposed to do them when we're 2 and 3 and 4. And so we really jump into our heads and try to affirm or assure that we're going to be safe or do the right thing. What ends up happening is we're not living deep in our core essence. We're living outside of our body. So we have to learn to come into the body. So I teach people some basic 4 things to work with. Is it all right if I show everybody?
Absolutely, that saved my life.
Okay. Oh, yes,
Sue.
right. So it's very big, very
huge.
big in your world, definitely. Yeah. It's, something traumatic like this happens in your life, and we splat, we disperse. Our energy comes off of our core, and we are no longer in charge of our lives. We feel like we're spinning out, and everything becomes overwhelming. We begin to feel like life is too much. We begin to question ourselves, the meaning of life, whether we're capable of continuing on, whether we'll ever be as effective as we were before, if life has changed forever. All of these kinds of things add to this more dispersal. So I teach people some basic things to do that will help in all other modalities that you ever are implementing or working with. If you will include these basic things with them at the same time, it will change your life faster. It will change your perception of who you are forever. It is an anchoring and a tethering to the core of the body. There is a process, an ancient Eastern Sanskrit term called mula bandha, and it means root lock, which means come home to yourself. Land back here where you know what's what. And we lose touch with that under times of stress. We lose touch with that. Sometimes we grow up in an environment that is tragic, that is dramatic or traumatic. Sometimes we are abandoned, or we feel that we've been abused, or maybe we didn't even know that it was abuse because it was what we grew up inside of. All kinds of us are living in this kind of reality, but there's a reason for it. There's a purpose for all of that, which maybe we'll talk about. But in the meantime, I want us to know, okay, how do I start dealing with those circumstances that haven't been nurturing? And how do I begin to turn it around so that I'm walking around inside of a nurturing experience on the inside, regardless of what I'm experiencing on the outside, in the world? So this idea of Mula Bandha is a way to anchor yourself in your body again, to come out of your head and drop down through your heart and into your deep wisdom core and land. And so it's a practice that everyone can do, but when you first start trying it, it might seem like, no way, can't do that. There's another one I can't do. But if you work with it for just a little while, things are going to change. You can attest to this.
Indeed, indeed.
I know, myself included. It's what allowed me to return to my body with the most illuminating experience that one could ever hope to have. I, under times of stress and duress, I went out onto the back balcony of my home here, set up to the skies one night. You show me. You know, I've got this life that's going along so great. I have a practice that's very successful, and I live in a home that I love, and I can take my friends on vacation, and it's amazing. And I feel so empty inside. This can't be all there is. There has to be something more. And I was immediately led to meditation, where we chanted and bowls were playing. And maybe I'll tell that story because it was a significant time in my life that sound vibration changed my reality. And I lit up. After that, I wanted to know how to come into that experience again. And this was a practice that got me there. So Mula Bandha is something that we contract the pelvic muscles in the pelvic bowl, similar to a Kegel exercise, or if you had to go to if you were going to the bathroom, you had to stop the stream all of a sudden, you'd have to contract certain muscles to make that happen. And if you contract those muscles consciously and intentionally, you start to anchor yourself. Because what happens in the splat is our energy gets dispersed and we have to call it back home again. We have to pull it in and anchor. And so this Mula Bandha root lock allows us to start that process. So you contract those muscles and you kind of lift them up, kind of like up toward your heart. You contract them and you squeeze them and you lift them up toward your heart. And when you lift them up toward your heart, what happens is it rolls your heart open automatically. So then I have people squeeze their shoulder blades toward each other, and it kind of lifts the heart open, but it anchors us at the heart level. So this is anchoring us at the root level and anchoring us at the heart level. And then I encourage people for just a moment to constrict your throat and make like a Darth Vader breath or hum or something that would allow you to feel a vibration at the root of the throat area. And then keep your nose straight ahead, but roll your eyes up. As if you roll your eyes up, there's a gentle tension behind the eyes. And this tension behind the eyes, and then this allocation in the throat, and then the anchoring in the center of the chest and the center of the pelvis creates a plumb line right down through the core of your body. And if you can build awareness, and you can, of this plumb line down through the core of your body, and learn to walk around aware that there is an energy pouring down through the center of the body into the earth that rises up, back up from the earth, comes back up through your body, comes out the top of your head, rolls around the outside of you, and comes back in at this root again, and recycles and recycles and recycles constantly. And that energy is you. That's the real you. You are made of the vibrational frequency. So if we can anchor our consciousness in the core of the body, we can start to become aware of this energy that's rippling through the core of this physical body, and we can start to know who we are. We are the energy itself. We are spirit energy, invisible energy, moving through a physical body constantly. And if we can learn that that's who we are, we don't forget who we are. When these external circumstances splat us, we pull ourselves right back in. It doesn't mean that we don't feel the emotions of our circumstances. It by no means is a bypass for what's here to be felt and to be lived through and to be unpacked and transmuted into a loving experience, an experience that brings us to our core, which is maybe what we'll talk about with the bus stop. But in the meantime, for us to glean from all of the insights that we're going to be exposed to in this whole series of interviews, the idea is, can I stay home for myself in this core and feel myself breathing up and down the central channel of this body in such a fashion that I will never forget who I am, no matter what is happening, no matter what's pulling me up into my head or out. Like, if you don't do this, you're not going to be okay. Or if you don't take that job, another one might not come along. Or if you leave this relationship, it's not going to be good for you. That nonsense is what the head creates. Right. It's a story. And we have to learn to not listen to that, but to be in touch with something deeper, more true, and more profoundly present in all of life's circumstances, regardless of what they are. So these 4 anchor points, one last thing, and then we'll see where we want to go with the conversation, that if we can anchor Mula Bandha and squeeze the blades, kind of hug your heart, constrict the throat just a little that you can feel yourself in there too, so I can feel myself in the core. I can feel myself in the heart space. because I can contract some muscles there and feel myself squeezing and breathing at the same time and creating this pulling in and pressing out against the muscles, and that's how I find where I am. And then roll the eyes and feel the tension there and start to breathe from above my head down into the body on an inhale. And then I exhale down into the earth. And then I inhale up from the earth and all of those nurturing energies that are there, and breathe up into the body, into the heart space again. And then I'm going to let that feel good. And I'm going to exhale right up out through the top of my head. And as I do, I access all these high frequency energies of inspiration and faith and trust and believing in life and hope without having to have specific belief systems that box me in. Therefore, I have nothing to defend. I can just be here and be present. And I take a deep breath in from that into the core of my body, and I let it feel good on the way through. And I can start to feel a vibration through my system. That's energy medicine. You're now working with energy medicine. You're using the movement of energy in your body to create spaciousness. Because inside that spaciousness, you can feel vibration. And when you can connect your mind with sensing what vibration is doing in your body, you become the self-healer that you always wanted to be. And you enhance the self-healer that perhaps you've already become, and you know it. But this one magnifies it. Because as we then breathe into the earth from that central channel breathing, we've now planted ourselves. And when we plant ourselves, we know this is my gig. This life is mine. I'm here to live it out into existence. I'm here to bring my sound out into the world rather than just kind of make do. Think of it like this. Let's say you're in a deep swimming pool and you're not at the surface where you can breathe. You're hanging out. You just take a breath and you go down and you're just hanging in the water. You know how that feels? Like it's like you're just, maybe you're in the ocean. You're just hanging, maybe in a cove. You can see the sand underneath you and the light flickering by down through and creating all those beautiful waves that happen through light coming through water. That's also a frequency. And you hang there as long as you can. You're almost at the bottom, but you're not quite. And then you realize you're running out of air. You got to get to the surface again. Rather than just trying to swim to the surface, it would be quicker if you would drop to the bottom and push off. Because you can get to the surface faster if you have some place to push off. This is what we're doing with creating these anchoring points. We give a place to push our sound off from, a place to push off from, so that we don't have to push off from other people or push off from old jobs or push off from relationships that feel stagnant. Maybe we can rejuvenate them. Maybe we can bring life to them if we can push off from something that is eternal, unwavering, and constant, that is divine, that is the truth of who we are in our own systems. So that's a big explanation, but it's a start on understanding what the energy codes are all about, what people can learn to do, and understanding the value of sound, frequency, and vibration, and the role of breath when it comes to being able to create a shift in how the energy is flowing through our systems.
And when I met you, my heart was so shattered. I never imagined that my heart could be whole again. There was no space to even see that as a reality. And the anchoring, I mean, it's the same thing in singing, that the higher I would go in a Puccini aria or Mozart or whatever, the higher that I would go, the more I had to ground into my technique, ground into the lower muscles here in my body. It's the same thing. But when you were talking to me about anchoring, it took a while, and then that anchoring landed, and I was able to do exactly what Dr. Sue described with the central channel breathing and the 4 points, that my heart began to have this resilience that was like incredible to feel with what had happened, because all I begged was, God, just take me. I don't want to be here anymore. Just take me. And suddenly there was this connection within my body to the essence of who I am, my vibrational frequency, what you're talking about, and this softness in my heart and this openness in my throat and this connection. It was phenomenal, and I am forever grateful to the energy codes and for my beloved son for, in his passing, for guiding me to you. I mean, that alone was incredible. And I know you teach. I'd love you to share a little bit about the bus stop, this, which, again, you know, when I met you, I thought, how could ever losing someone you love more than anything be a good thing? And I learned with your work that there's a bigger plan, and it's all in our favor. It's all good. And Dylan's passing, I mean, I remember saying this to you, I never thought I could stand up in a group of people and say my son's passing brought some very positive things. I never thought I could say that. Speak to us a little bit about the bus stop, because that, man, oh man, that changed so many things in my life.
I remember the first time we talked about the bus stop. I remember the look in your
Mad
eye.
at you.
I know.
I was like, don't you dare say that to me. I'll slap
and I
you.
was like, it's okay. I get it. It's a lot to wrap your mind around the first time. And so we just breathed with it, and we just let it set for a while. And after hearing the conversation a few times, and you really giving serious contemplation and serious acceptance in your heart about a possibility that there could be something there for you, I started to see the energy open up. Because after my own opening, I could see energy that I could see as a kid, but it got shut down. And then I wanted to get it back in my 20s and my 30s, and I never could. And after the big opening that, you know, maybe we'll have time to share a little bit about that experience that I had, it returned. So I can see when someone is in straight out resistance to this bus stop conversation idea. And I can see when they start to open. And when they open just a little to the possibility, the divine forces of nature, of the cosmos, far beyond just planet Earth, these multi-dimensions start to fall in. We let them in by just cracking ourselves open. And so often it happens during a time of trauma, during a dramatic time in our lives where we do feel shattered because we're too fractured up enough to stay strong on our resistance. We're just spent, we're depleted, exhausted, and afraid. And so in those moments, we're actually vulnerable to possibility and open in a way that no other set of circumstances would take us to. And it is overwhelming, overwhelmingly beautiful what can happen if it just gets cracked open just a little. You know, we see in the Eastern culture the blooming lotus, you know, the lotus blossoms being depicted as enlightenment and the open-heartedness. And we've depicted in Western cultures about the blossoming of a rose or the opening of a lily, or, you know, the idea that there is this fruitfulness that ultimately happens in life. And that is what I want people to come to consciously, intentionally.
I mean, when you said, I'm just thinking, you know, so many people said to me, you need to have some medication. It was like, what? Medication, I appreciate your help, but medicate, I knew in my heart that needed to be felt. And just as you said, that space needed to be opened, but in the most tender way, infused with love, that there could be love and a recognition, perhaps there's a deeper reason for this life experience for me.
Exactly. You know, so many people are medicated for these kinds of things, and I completely have great compassion and understanding for the necessity until you learn about some ways of truly managing energies, the energies of your emotions, the energies of your thoughts, the energies of your broken heart, the energies of your deep wisdom that's been concealed from you in a culture that doesn't know how to nurture it and bring it forward. The energetics of having been shut down in your past, in the history of this life, of trying to come forward with your own creativity and it not working out so well, or wondering where your place is, and it being overwhelming, or not being able to handle the dramas and traumas that we've been speaking about. And we turn to something to give us a moment of reprieve. And our culture is so very oriented in this realm of medicating the symptom that it's become a real problem in our culture. And there are ways for that to be turned around. And that is definitely what we're working with. There is another way for us to address the cause. And life is to be felt. And when feeling life feels too much, I want you to understand this idea of the bus stop conversation that we've been referencing. The bus stop conversation is something that starts to unpack this idea that life is so hard and harsh and unfair and unkind and unloving, and injects an idea that maybe there's more to the picture, because there is. I know that we each have been up against things that seem overwhelming, and I know that it makes perfect sense that we would land in this kind of a disposition. But I want you to just entertain the idea that we get together and we come into this life for the purpose of awakening ourselves to our own magnificence. And to whatever degree we're ready to awaken, the circumstances of our lives are going to help prod us into that. Ultimately, to lift us up to our magnificence. Ultimately, for us to know our beauty. Ultimately, for us to then turn and help others find the same. And I knew that the night I met you, that this was your destiny, because I could see the energetic of your field. I knew what was in store. And I knew that the bus stop conversation applied. So I'd like to share with you what I mean by this bus stop conversation. I found myself speaking in a variety of environments: medical environments, scientific environments, spiritual environments, etc. In spiritual communities, I could say, what if we were all a council of angels who agreed to come in here and help each other awaken to our magnificence? And one agreed to hold the feet to the fire of another in just the right moment, at just the right time, when it was the last thing in the world that you wanted. But they'd show up for you so that you could anchor and awaken and shine. And when I found myself in other communities, speaking about a council of angels just, kind of wasn't going to fly. So I just made it super light. And I said, okay, what if we were all gathering to catch the bus to come to planet Earth? And we went to the bus stop waiting for the bus. And while we were sitting at the bus stop for our pickup, we had a conversation. And the other people at the bus stop, we got together and said, well, what are you going to Earth for? And one person said, well, I've been there before, actually, and it's an amazing place, but it's kind of intense. And just at the very end, right before I exited, I had this experience that they call forgiveness. So I'm going back because that experience was so amazing. I'm going back for a big one. And like you could call it like a level 3 of experience that I've had before, and I'm going in for a 10. I'm going in for the big one. And so what I'm going to need is someone to help me have the experience. So other people at the bus stop are like, awesome. Whoa, what an idea. Level 10 experience of forgiveness. That must be amazing if your level 3 was so awesome that you're wanting to go back to have a bigger. And so they say, well, what would it take for you to have a level 10 experience of forgiveness? And you say, I don't know. Well, I guess someone would have to do something kind of unforgivable in order for me to reach inside of myself and find some level of forgiveness beyond anything I've ever known before. They would have to do that. And then I would have to live with this nearly unforgivable thing for a long time and experience the adverse effects of carrying a grudge or being victimized or being hurt or feeling abandoned, whatever the case may be. Constantly running through my mind the unfairness and the wrongness of that happening. And eventually my system would weaken. And as my system weakened because I was spending all that energy on all that stuff from the past, I would get to some low enough vibrational frequency that it tapped the pain. And when I tapped the pain and dropped a little lower than that even, something would hit the bottom of the barrel kind of thing, and I would rise up, reach inside of myself and find something I never knew I had, which we would call forgiveness for this horrible experience, and pull it up and out of me. And in doing so, I would come to know myself in a deeper way than I would have ever known had any other set of circumstances been my life experience. And so, of course, someone at the bus stop says, whoa, whoa. So what you're saying is when you forgive more deeply than you've ever forgiven before, you have a more amazing experience of yourself than you ever thought you would have. And you say, precisely. That's exactly how it works. And so somebody else at the bus stop is like, well, like what? What do we have to do to make you have to forgive? And so, we start investigating that. And maybe someone has to cross the center line after drinking too much and hit my car and paralyze me and take a family member from me. And it could have been avoided because they knew better. Everybody knows you don't do that, but they did it anyway. So now I've got that on top of the actual happening. I've got this judgment about it. It's just taking the life out of me kind of thing. And so you couple up these huge experiences and you realize that in that moment, that was what was required, which is what I know that you got to. That was what was required for you to find a deeper version of yourself than you had ever accessed before. Now, does it have to be traumatic? No, but when it is traumatic, that's why. Does it have to be that we have these horrible experiences in order to awaken? No. We can have a different bus stop conversation, and that is what we're here to live out. I'm just offering up that if it has been traumatic to this degree, there's a reason. And that reason can serve the greatest healing and beyond healing that you could ever imagine, and beyond what you could imagine, if we can just start to put it in a perspective like what we have shared. What we're talking about here is that if there has been something, or is now something in your life that is just really hard to deal with, it's just really tough to deal with, there's a reason for that. And what I'm sharing with people is how to access turning that into something. And these anchor points in breathing up and down through this central channel are a mere beginning, but they are a beginning. We can share more things if we have time, but what I want you to know that just anchoring your consciousness back inside your body, gathering yourself back again, squeezing those anchor points and breathing up the central channel, it allows you to come home in such a fashion that your system begins to become present with circumstances that seemed unlivable, unbelievable, unacceptable. And that's what's happened with you.
This was exactly also the reason that I felt so inspired to offer this series with, especially to begin with you, Dr. Sue, to really give as many people as possible the information that something that looks terrible and as horrendous as losing a child, there is an incredible life after that if we are willing to step into that and breathe and do the work that's necessary. And I'm so grateful that I found you to do that, because it's changed everything.
Something just popped into my mind when you were just saying this, that I remember a moment when you started to feel good, and you still had this reality right around you, right in front of you, that you had lost your son, and that was something that seemed to be forever. And I remember you wondering if you were feeling disassociated, or if you were just packing it away somewhere because you were starting to feel a lift inside of you. And I remember we had to have the conversation, which is an important conversation for everyone to understand when it comes to healing, is that there's a moment where it has to be okay that it's okay. Mm-hmm. That it has to be okay that I'm not grieving quite as much as I was, because we associate the grief with the love. We associate the pain with how much we loved. And if even if it's a divorce, or if it is the loss of a job, or the loss of a family member, or the strain of a pain pattern in your life that you're not able to get through or get past or to heal, that that we tend to associate the amount of suffering with how important the person was, or the relationship was, or the job was, or having a job is, or how identified with the pain patterns we have become, or the disease condition that we have been diagnosed as. We build identities around those states of, I'll call it suffering of some sort. We build a belief around it. Sometimes we've been given a diagnosis that we've done a lot of research on since that diagnosis. And now we are connected in, kind of merged with this name of a condition that is guiding our lives now. And what I have found in working with people over the last 30 years in private practice, one-on-one with patients over 20 years at a time, I just was celebrating, with a patient who's 82 years old and feels younger than he felt, 15 years ago. Celebrating the fact that we don't have to diagnose problems and stay identified as the diagnosis. We are not our diagnosis. We are an energy system that is designed to be flowing freely, vibrating at a frequency of health and wholeness and healing constantly. And some things have happened in our lives that have shut down that capacity and shut down our capacity to return to that state. And we can return to that state. We just have to learn some things that allow us to do so. That's why I teach the energy codes, and that's why I teach the hands-on healing practices of bioenergetic synchronization work that I do, is to put the power back in the hands of the people that we are, back in our own hands, so that we can return to a state of it being okay, and we can have an understanding that it's okay to be okay, that we still love, even though we're not suffering. And there are moments where the pain rises, even in the face of all the healedness that has happened. And we've learned the skills through the energy codes to manage that. And we learn the tools of sound vibration, like the singing bowls, and sound vibration, like learning to tone or hum or sing, that move the energy again, that we move to those tools in those moments, but still have an understanding that there's an overarching idea, that there's a purpose for everything that happens in our life. And this bus stop conversation is designed to be a way for us to relate to the fact that these circumstances serve my awakening. One last thing about the bus stop conversation that is so important, that if I was asking at the bus stop to awaken, and part of my bus stop conversation meant I was in need of a level 10 forgiveness, someone was going to have to volunteer to be the perpetrator, the one who drank too much and crossed the center line, or the one who chose to do something that was devastating in some way. And that one was the one who cared the most. That one was the one who agreed, who shook hands with us and said, I got this, I'll do this. Because in that, everyone completes their bus stop journey. If you were abused, if you were mishandled in some way, and this is a big one for you to wrap your mind around, and I speak from experience. I speak to you from the place of recognizing that my perpetrator was the one who agreed at my bus stop to shove me into a reality that I would have to grapple with and question. What is love? What is caring? What is conscientiousness? What is it all about? What is real? How do I come to terms with that? How do I trust? How do I know? And if I hadn't been through those sets of circumstances, I would not know who I am. And I would not be here able to lead the way for others to unpack the idea that this was horrible only, that this hurt me only, that this caused me to be confused only. It started with those circumstances, but it took me somewhere else. and anchoring in my core and breathing up and down through this channel started to build an integration of the chakra system, which is just the various levels of my own consciousness, my own belongingness, and my own ability to be in relationship, and my ability to be strong and loving and speak my truth and manifest my divinity here in this body, and be available to awaken to my multidimensionality, and to know that I am made of God's source energy packed in a body, and that my destiny is to experience that here on this earth, in this body, and to share that ability with everyone that I come in contact with. I might not know that today if I hadn't been through those bus stop conversations.
I know I said sometimes to Dylan, Sonny, I never made that agreement with you. And he's laughing his head off and going, Mom, remember? And it's true. As the time has passed now, that has anchored inside me that the bus stop is exactly because there's been so much synchronization of things with him. And I'm living now in a space of joy, which I could not have seen 3.5 years ago. No way. And so it does make sense. It is perfect. It is perfect. It's crazy, and it's true.
We have to walk it.
We have to walk it.
What we have to do is learn the tools to walk it with grace.
Yeah.
We have to walk our path. We have to. That's why we're here. We get to. That's what I want you to understand, is that it's not a burdensome thing that we have to survive. I teach about the backside of the model where we think that way. We think, I got to get through this. I just got to deal with this. And there's a quantum flip that we make to the front side of the model that allows us to build enough circuitry. In fact, we build enough circuitry through the practices that I teach to be able to progress ourselves to what I call the front side of the model of consciousness, where we begin to truly, authentically feel the empowerment that is delivered through these circumstances. And we ultimately begin to recognize that it's a divine orchestration, and that these greatest painful experiences that we have encountered are actually an opportunity to build some circuitry. Do we have just a few moments for me to share some circuit building ideas?
Yeah, and there's 2 more things I want to ask you. So we are good on
All
time.
right.
You are my opening guest. So.
Okay, my dear. So this one will be life-changing for you. So I don't want you to miss this opportunity. Now, it's just the tip of the iceberg on what you could learn. Of course, I would rather teach you in person. I'd rather be there and have an opportunity to share a couple of days with you to make sure that you're getting this big picture. Because the last thing I ever want to do is come across as if I'm just saying a few simple things and your big traumas are no big deal, because that's not true, and I understand that. And as a doctor and working with tens of thousands of patients over the last 30 years and working in groups with people and teaching them how they can self-heal, I'm very aware and attuned to the intimate and delicate nature of healing and what is required. And I want to invite you into this, that your mind is not equipped to heal you alone. It requires the body, which grounds you and anchors you, and the breath, which integrates and weaves. It's the spirit. You are the breath in the body. When you stop breathing, you leave the body and you go elsewhere. You don't die, you go elsewhere. You are the breath in the body. And I want you to train your mind to find you. And the way that we do that is when you are thinking a thought that is stressful, or when you are encountering something that is overwhelming, I want to invite you to take your attention to the body and let the body help serve what's happening and what needs to happen. Rather than staying in your mind and staying in your head and trying to figure out how to get okay with this situation, or try to figure out the fairness, or to figure out how you're supposed to get into some better state of being, let the body help. That's what it's here for. It's here to create a vessel for you to land in and to begin to unpack this scenario. So I call it take it to the body. Take your attention to the body. In any stressful situation or thought, there is a charge that can be located in your body if you just train your mind to find it. And if you take your attention to the body, there'll be a lump in your throat or a knot in your stomach or some kind of tension somewhere. And I'm going to invite you to squeeze it back and let it know that contact has been made, that you're starting to put it together and you're starting to realize that the object of your life, the objective of your life is to put mind, body, breath back together again so that you can live in your wholeness here. No matter what the circumstances are in your life that seem to keep you from doing that, if you just take your attention to the body's going to tell you how to begin to do this with grace and ease. There's an area in the body that has a charge. You squeeze it back. So maybe it's in my stomach. Ugh. I just think about that situation and it just gets me in the gut. Squeeze it back. Just find a way to contract those muscles in your stomach and then practice these 4 anchor points until they're second nature. Mula Bandha, root lock. Squeeze your heart, blades together, open the heart, lift up Mula Bandha toward the heart. I still have my attention on this stomach. I'm coming back to it in a minute. Squeeze the throat so that I can feel and hear myself in there. Darth Vader breath so that I can feel the vibration. Or hum. If I just hum, I can find it right there. Roll the eyes so that I can find the tension behind the eyes. To find this central channel, these 4 anchor points, and breathe up and down this central channel. Go in an elevator shaft and drop yourself down all the way to Mula Bandha, your root, and into the earth beneath where you sit. Come back up in the elevator, much slower than I'm describing right now, just one smidgen at a time. And as you pass through the stomach area that has a knot in it because of this situation that you're in, you squeeze it too. And you include it in the mix as you breathe up to your heart. And you exhale out the top of your central channel. And then you breathe down through the central channel, through the heart, and you breathe right through that squeezed stomach and that squeezed Mula Bandha until they start to open and talk to each other. Because when they bond, there's a flow of energy through your body that is unwavering, that is the healer within, that is the real you here on planet Earth in a body operating freely. And you can heal, you can open, and you can feel the great service of the breath in the body by doing so. And I know you know something about that.
Yeah, I remember thinking about when we add the sound to the 4 points, when we add sound to that, the sound is activating and unifying. There's something that happens in addition to the breath when I add whether it's just a hum. I mean, many people say, I can't sing, I can't tone, but everyone can hum. And we'll be hearing more about that from Jonathan Goldman too later in the series. Just by adding that vibrational frequency, that makes
it creates spaciousness.
Huge difference.
The sound creates an opening. It's like if you picture gunk and contraction, and you start to breathe through it, it starts to open it, and then you accentuate it by squeezing this central channel and breathing through it. It starts to reverberate. And then you add a tone, a sound, an ah, oh, whatever is coming through you, it activates and opens the sound, the sacred space. Yeah, it opens sacred space in the body just by kind of rattling it free, like being in the presence of a gong or drumming or these bowls. Those sounds open us.
But we become our own sounding bowl. We are our own sounding bowl when we add the sound to it.
Exactly.
And that's what's also been a huge part of moving this energy of grief and loss. And healing. Yeah. The sound brings that harmony. So I would love to ask you too, because there is a very important project that you've been working on just about as long as I know you. It's a culmination of your life's work. There's a book coming out.
There's a book. There's a book.
In the spring.
Hallelujah, there's a book.
With Simon & Schuster. And I can't wait because so many people have asked me, does she have a book? Yeah, there's a couple of books, but this book, this is the one. Maybe you'd speak to us a little bit about this exciting...
Happily. Yes, people have been asking me to write a book for more than a decade. And it was just, I'm a sound vocal speaker, teacher. There is a sound vibration that comes through my voice when I'm doing the workshops that I teach, and it's just been my great love. And so the resonant tones are much more fluid than sitting and typing, etc. So I dictated the book, and I had a writer help as we transcribed it and arranged it, and then I moved into really working with every detail. And in the details of this book I have codified all of the teachings that I've been working with in my coursework. And so I've put them into an anchoring code and a clearing code and a love code and a chemistry code and all kinds of codified ways that we work with energy medicine for self-healing and for bettering relationships, of course, and having a better sense of self and identifying the soulful self and recognizing when we're caught up in our protective personalities, our egos, or feeling in our inadequacies, etc. And so I'm thrilled about it because the whole middle section of the book is how-tos, beautiful practices and principles for people to actually do that will increase the vibrational frequency of their system and allow for their own higher self to drop in. You know, several years ago, I had an amazing experience.
I wanted to ask you about sound in your life.
Yeah, right. So sound opened my world to an entirely different reality. I was a perfectionist and very detailed and very focused on outcomes and structure. As a doctor, I had to be operating that way. And I was recognizing that out on that balcony, my life was empty. And so I was drawn to meditation and to sound and toning, etc. And I found myself in a meditation group, and I was drawn to participate in this amazing chanting that was happening in the ballroom. And my nature had me working around trying to make sure everything went perfectly. And in this moment, I was like, I'm just going in there. You know, I'm just going to drop this and go do this. So I was chanting sounds of the divine, 108 names of the Mother Divine, and then we dropped into this chant that is Om Namah Shivaya. And it opens you and drops you in and drops you in. And in the midst of that, I was having to concentrate because I didn't know Sanskrit terms. I didn't know the words, so I had to think really in a very focused fashion. And I had to take big, deep breaths that I was not accustomed to taking because I breathed up here all the time. And I had to learn to breathe lower in my belly. And so I was doing all that at the same time and trying to sit just so that the energy could move through my body. And these anchor points weren't in my life yet, so I didn't know how to do all that. But as this chant was progressing, I clicked in to doing this focused concentration, toning the sound vibrational frequency that allowed for a reverberation that we're describing, all the while taking long, low belly breaths and dropping deep into my core to do so. And I illuminated. I awakened. I had a transcendent awakening, a multidimensional awakening that brought me into the Godhead, the Atman, brought me into the higher self, the higher Christed consciousness illuminated up above my primitive brain. And I became very aware that we are beings of light, that we are truly rays of light, and that we are coming here. I was at the Atman, awake. I could see 360 degrees around me in a light so brilliantly bright. It was 10 times brighter than the brightest day in the desert that I had ever seen. And I knew that this was the truth of who I was. I was a ray of light. I could see the earth beneath me, the size of a marble. And I was embedded into the earth up to what would have been my knees, but I was just this ray of light, taking a huge breath, with every breath trying to breathe this amazing presence. I was this beautiful pink blanket of translucent iridescent light was the horizon, and this brilliant light overhead. Every time I took a breath in, this horizon would rise like these big wings of a stingray in the ocean, swimming slow motion, just rising and falling with each inhale and exhale. And I knew in that moment that this is the truth of who we are. And what I want you to know about this experience, and that I share with everyone, is that there was nowhere to go. There was nothing to become. There was nothing to prove. There was nothing to fit into. There was only magnificence. There was nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing wrong. I was whole and complete. I was everything that existed, and I was here. And I knew that this is who we are and what we are meant to experience in this life. No exceptions. And so when I came down out of that experience, I knew that breath and sound had changed my life. And I had no idea what to do with what I had just experienced. And I spent the next 10 years of my life codifying what I had to do to return to that state on command. And for many, many months, I couldn't do it. For many years, I could get glimpses. And then it started to fall together. I started to piece it together again. And I started sharing it with my patients. And I have put that information in the book that's coming out with Simon & Schuster, spring of 2019. And to the very best of my ability, I have shared with you the wonderful cases that other people have solved and the healings that have happened. And I know that this is available for us when we just begin to learn to build the circuitry. When you find that contracted area and you squeeze it back, you're starting to build electromagnetic circuitry, sound vibrational frequencies that are hooking up, so much so that the sensory nervous system of your own system will begin to be able to pick up on it and build neurosynapses to support the flow. And that flow is where healing happens. And so when the nervous system gets involved, it becomes reproducible and sustainable. And that's what we have to do.
Do you mind? I would love for you to show, because when I'm leading the sound meditations, I'm often showing your diagrams. Do you mind to show us, for those of our audience that don't know the toric field, would you mind to show them that?
Oh, sure.
That picture?
We were just talking, and I brought one of these up.
Because people they love to see that picture, that it gives them such a good sense of everything.
So this toric flow is here. This is the truth of who we are. We are this light. So I was suspended high above this. I woke up way up here, high above this. And dropping down into the earth, we hit the earth, and the earth kind of steps the energy down. And we rise back up through this body, and the energy comes up through the head and just fountains around outside of the body and returns back in at the level of the root. And then it rises again and just recycles and recycles. Constantly more is pouring in. As we learn more and awaken more and accept more, we allow more of this high frequency energy to fall through, and it gets stepped down for human consumption, and then it rises up through us. And if this energy is interrupted, it creates a distortion. If there are areas of our system that are not yet integrated, like we don't believe that we can be strong and loving, or we don't believe that our own wisdom matters, we don't trust our gut, etc., in those types of situations, we start to create interference here along the way. And that energy rises, it has to go around that, which creates a distortion in the energy field. And if that energy field is distorted, we look out through this and we see a distorted reality. And in that, we see a world that doesn't care. And then we start to believe that it's true. And so we start to pick out the non-caringness in the things that people do. And we wobble. Instead of picking out the beauty and speaking straight back to that. Instead of seeing the perfection and seeing that and pulling that out of people, we pull distortions out of one another. And the next thing you know, we're living in a world that doesn't agree on anything, that's fighting and has conflict in its daily conversation. And it's hard to heal under those circumstances. And so what I'm interested in doing is teaching people how to remove those interferences so there's no wobble, so the distortion gets perfected, so that we learn to live in the perfect world as the perfected and perfecting beings that we are. We are perfecting ourselves constantly. We are perfecting the experience of the great perfection that we are having with every breath that we take. We just have to learn how to do that.
And the energy codes are a fantastic and really thorough and easy to follow way to do that. They have changed my life.
Mine too.
Dr. Sue, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience? Is there anything else that's in your heart? This whole series is about the vibration from the heart. It's heart presence, and all our guests are really, there's such a heart connection for me with them. And is there
Absolutely.
anything else that
Yes, I just want to remind you that with everything that you're going to hear in this series, if you hear and listen from your own core and central channel and anchored in your core, the impact that ripples out from you in the world because of the healings that will happen will have a greater impact because it will be grounded in the perfection of your being, not influenced by your head and your doubts and your fears, etc., but truly from your heart resonance. When you're in this divine heart space, in this central channel, you are thousands of times more effective than the most brilliant thought you can think would ever be. Your presence is more effective than your thoughts, and your presence is made of love. We are an infinite field of energy. When we start compressing that infinite field of energy into physical form, like we started speaking about in this conversation, if we back out on that and start it over, the very first vibrational frequency that gets created is the vibration that we call love. Yeah. So you are love packed in a body. And so everything that we can do to awaken as that allows us to reverberate out into the world, singing a song, emitting a symphony of energies of creativity that are meant to be. They are our medicine for the world. There's nothing broken. There is nothing wrong. There is nothing missing. You are built for this. This is your gig. May we live heaven earth together.
And may we all walk in the frequency of love. May we all feel the vibration of love in every cell of our being. We are being called and asked for that now at this time on the planet. So thank you so much, Dr. Sue,
Absolutely.
For opening this series.
My pleasure, my dear.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I look forward to welcoming Anita Moorjani and David Premal and Miten and many other guests that I think will inspire and uplift your heart and give you practical tools for integrating the power of sound, the healing power of sound, sound vibration, energy medicine into your lives, that we all work together to make this a more harmonious place for us to live. Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Sue.